Good morning, guys. Welcome to the Surfside Kollel Bobker at shul.com. And we are discussing to flee or to stay. It's an article by Joe Bobker. He was an individual born in displaced persons camp in Ulm, Germany, ULM, Germany, to Holocaust survivors. He did a lot of research. He's a very intelligent individual. I read a few of the articles that he read. He wrote a few books. I actually bought one of his books this week. You can check him out on Amazon. I don't get any commission or anything of any kind. You do it on your own. But he's an author of books. He has one on Shalom Bayit, which I bought. It's supposed to be a humorous book about Shalom Bayit of the previous generation, not our generation, of the 60s and 70s, a different world than we live in today. And his discussion of to flee or to stay is very, very simple. He was born in displaced persons camp, and his question was, why was he even born there? Why did his parents not leave? Like, what happened? What was the previous signs, and why did everybody ignore them, before Hitler rose to power? So this is we're at part 3, and so we're going to continue. Let's get into it. Over the next decade, a stunned Rav Karelitz, this is talking about the Chazon Ish, stood by helplessly as his family, friends, teachers, and chavruta and previous communities literally went up in smoke. By 1945, with the near total destruction of Torah scholarship and leadership in Europe, Rav Karelitz emerged as the universally recognized Posek Aharon, the final Torah authority, and spearheaded the Torah revolution in Palestine after World War II, the war. Let's look, he has a note on 11, let's take a look. Rabbi Aharon Suraski, Chazon Ish, a biography of Rabbi Aharon Yeshaya Karelitz, and he brings a source for this. In this capacity, he had fielded one particularly agonizing query from European Torah leaders. Must I stay or may I flee? This was the Chazon Ish. He went into this. Rav Karelitz consistently avoided a direct answer. Interesting. See, he didn't want to answer it. Instead, he directed his questioners to an earlier responsum. Responsum is what's called a shoot. A shoot is Shin Vav Tav, which is She'elot Utshuvot. Shoots are very important. Why are shoots important? Because shoots are when rabbis take a question and don't give you a 60-second answer, but they delve into it with a lot of depth and authority. In fact, shoots override previous rabbis' works, which means if a rabbi wrote a book that is 800 pages, and then he wrote one shoot that goes into one examination of a halakha topic, the shoot overrides his book. Because the shoots are really, really, they're b'dikduk. Like, you look at some of these shoots that they do, they're fantastic. They literally give in all the opinions. They tell you no, yes, no, maybe, and they kind of give it to you. So the Chazon Ish, when they asked him to flee or to stay about what had happened, he didn't want to answer.
It's a very hard question to answer.
Listen, why do you think we're learning this? We're learning this because we're 75 years after the Holocaust. About 75 years. Sammy, how many years are we? 50? About 80 years. Less than 80 years. We're less than 80 years from 1945. Or let's push it to 85 years and say 85 years would be before Hitler even rose to power. And we're trying to see what happened there. What were the leaders saying?
I think that's precisely your question. There was so much time there. That's precisely your question. There was so much time.
And there were very knowledgeable people. So yesterday we picked up on a few rabbis who literally told everybody, get out now. And we heard about those that said, no, stay. So we discussed some of that yesterday. Let's take a look at this. So he says, instead, he directed his questions to an earlier response. I'm going to shoot from Rabbi Moshe Sofer Schreiber, who's the Hatam Sofer, Rav Moshe Sofer, the Rosh Yeshiva of Pressburg. The two main yeshivot at the beginning of the 19th century were Rav Chaim Volozhin's yeshiva in White Russia and the Hatam Sofer's yeshiva. After Volozhin was closed, the yeshivot of Telzh, Grodno, Kamenetz, Baranowitsk, and Mir were founded. All of them were patterned on the example of Volozhin, except for the inclusion of Musad, which was not part of the Volozhin yeshiva's curriculum. Now, interesting, all of our yeshivot today follow Rav Chaim Volozhin's style. Why is this important? Because in the Sephardic and the Middle Eastern countries, we did not follow Rav Chaim Volozhin's school of thought and the yeshiva style. What were the Sephardim doing at the time? They had a system. We teach everyone Kiri'ah first. You can't learn the religion until you know how to read and write well. First they read and they write well. You have to know all the ta'amim, the trope. You have to know how to sing, how to pray. Once we knocked this out and you guys were solid in knowing how to pray and read and write, then we learned the entire Tanakh, Be'al Peh, with the Targum and know all the foundational 24 books solid. Then they would go to the Mishnayot and then Gemara. Today, the current yeshiva system is that people graduate from 12th grade yeshiva. They don't know very little from the Tanakh, if anything in the Nevi'im, Ketubim. They do know Gemariyot. A lot of them are not even so knowledgeable in Halakha. It's a style of the yeshiva that was developed by Rav Chaim Volozhin, and he had a good reason for that style. And the Sfaradim in the modern Western world have taken this upon them. If you go to Israel, they actually have other yeshivot that follow the older systems. And when you see the kids growing up, like you speak to them, they're so knowledgeable. You meet kids that are 11 years old, and like leave aside that they're great in Gemara, they know the stuff. I'm jealous. I meet some of these kids. The guy knows every story in the Navi, he knows everything in the Ketubim, and we don't have this. So Rav Chaim Volozhin had a style. When that yeshiva got shut down, I don't remember the exact reason why it got shut down. I think it got shut down because they had to send some of the students to the army or something, and he said no. I don't remember the exact details. We can check it up. So the other yeshivot opened. The other yeshivot added one new thing in the curriculum called Musar. Musar has another word. It's called philosophy, or today you might call it Hashkafa. They're all the same thing. Musar, Hashkafa, and philosophy all are under the same umbrella. Let's continue. In Pressburg, Austrian Empire, and the leading halachic authority during the later half of the 18th century. That's Hatam Sofer. Hatam Sofer is a major halachic authority. But Rav Sofer didn't have a psak for this touchy subject either. He insisted it was a strictly personal dilemma that each community activist must follow his own conscience. You heard what Hatam Sofer said? Yeah. When it came to this issue of to flee or to stay, that's not something that he gave in response to. He says every individual community and every person had to look into himself and follow his own conscience. It's interesting. That's the reason why we're learning it.
I read a book about him.
Oh, what do you mean? He had a great-grandson, the Hatan Sofer, who was in New York. You have the Hatam Sofer, you have the Tav Sofer. They had a few generations.
I think he was actually planning to go to Israel, if I remember, and he didn't do it because of the community.
Let's take a look what he says here. Why the reluctance to deliver a binding halachic response on something like this? Rav Sofer had already personally grappled with this predicament. In 1809, 3 years after he became chief rabbi of Pressburg was invaded by Napoleon Bonaparte's army. Okay, what was the problem with Napoleon? Napoleon was very liberté, égalité, fraternité. What happened? And Rav Sofer fled Pressburg. Later, in a remorseful memoir, he apologized for leaving his community. Let's take a look at what he says on 13. Actually, we read 13? Right here. Actually, the Jews of Europe, religious and secular, were captivated by this short soldier with a giant ego. It's well known that Napoleon was short, but he had a tremendous ego. And many German Jews changed their name to Sconthil, a translation of Bonaparte. Interesting. Italian Jews named their sons, let's take a look here, where it goes next. Italian Jews named their sons Napoleon. Hasidic folk legend has Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Rimanov riding beside the Corsican soldier as he brings down the ghetto walls. Interesting. Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, great-grandson of the Baal Shem Tov, was convinced that the French emperor was God's vehicle to help the Jews reach their redemption. Rav Nachman saw the French-Russian conflict as the Torah prophesied pre-messianic apocalyptic war of Gog and Magog. Interesting. Based on a gematria that the Messiah's arrival would be in 5570 or 1810. There was another war, the War of 1810 in the United States. Napoleon invaded Russia in 1812, which was close enough. But Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, that's the Alter Rebbe of the Chabad, the author of the Tanya, the Bible of the Chabad Hasidim, strongly opposed the French liberator, concerned that French emancipation of the Jews would eventually cripple Jewish traditional values as it did. At Rav Shneur Zalman's urging, one of his disciples, Rabbi Moshe Meisel of Vilna, who had defected from the Misnagdic Gaon of Vilna, became a translator in the French High Command, but was in reality a spy, and kept the Russian generals apprised of French military decisions. The Alter Rebbe died in Payin, Russia, in 1812 while fleeing Napoleon's advancing Grand Army. After it says army here with A-R-M-E-E. So that's why I said army. I know how to read English, guys. I know sometimes you guys look at me. I'm reading, some of these words are like, I'm reading the article. Okay, after the Russians won, the Tsar honored Rav Shneur and awarded his descendants the status of an honorable citizen for all generations. Just as a side note, till today, the Russians and Chabad have a tremendously good relationship. At least the Chabad rabbi of Russia. I know there's some issue, and they had that issues with the books. With the books, I know about the issue with the books. They sued them in Supreme Court to get all their old books. Leave that. But for the most part, Chabad has a respect.
That story is a son-in-law. It's not the country.
It was a setup. Oh.
That story is a son-in-law that left.
Oh, that left the fold.
Yeah, and he was claiming it as part of his belonging.
As part of it, because I remember seeing it. But for the most part, from what I read, you see that the Russians authorities, for the most part, are respectful of Chabad. They give them that honor. And see, the Tsar had awarded Rav Shneur Zalman Miliadi an honorable citizen for all generations.
I think that just changed though in the last month and a half.
What do you mean?
Right. Something happened last
switching
month.
The Shita.
And, yeah.
Again, it's not such a
And Russian Jews now are
no,
quite
Putin.
frightened. But I'm not talking about the airport disaster. That's
No, in general, Putin is cornered, so whatever he's doing now is not.
so the Jews,
Okay, but for the most part, I think until about a short time ago, this was generally the consensus.
Yeah.
This was the consensus of the Russian authorities. They were very respectful of Chabad. This honorarium, Shabbat Shalom, John. This honorarium provided safety to the next 5 generations of Chabad Rebbes as they served the Jews of Russia. So the next 5 generations had a lot of success in Russia because they had that honorable citizen status that was granted to them. Let's continue. And Rav Sofer fled. Okay, that was then he apologized to the community. Okay, in this stunning personal admission, the Khatam Sofer described his pain at not staying and sharing in the burden of his people. Okay, we're going into a little bit of a different topic.
He left and he survived.
He left Pressburg because of Napoleon Bonaparte, and then he survived. Then
his people didn't.
No, they did, and then he came back. He ran away, and when he ran away, he thought that would be the right decision, and then he came back. He apologized. He's like, okay, I'm here, but let's take a look what he says. In the stunning personal admission, the Khatam Sofer described his pain at not staying and sharing the burden of his people, and confessed that the issue was still halachically ambiguous for him. He still had a difficulty in understanding what is the right decision to make here. I have heard many people here say that with Prague under siege, the situation as it was 60 years ago, when the illustrious Rabbi Yecheskel, which is Rabbi Yecheskel Landau of Prague, known as the Noda B'Yehuda, wanted to leave and the city leaders would not let him leave. His desire to leave was understandable. One should avoid staying in a place of danger. Noda B'Yehuda was very, very straight. Guys, if there's danger, you don't need me to tell you to leave. Pick up and go. They were acting in their own interest by not letting him go. When he wanted to leave, the people didn't let him. They wanted their protector with them. And it was fitting for a Jewish leader to risk his life and throw it away for his people rather than leaving them in danger and escaping with his own life alone. However, I have seen that many disagree with this. When the community of Mainz was besieged some years ago, they sent their illustrious sage Rav Chaim Hirsch to Frankfurt. The people of Koblenz community and the Rabbi Ziskind Gunderst did the same. When Frankfurt was besieged, they sent my teacher, the illustrious author of the Hafla'ah, Rabbi Pinchas Horowitz, to Hinau. After all, why should he be a heavy burden on them when they are in trouble? So here there's 2 schools. One school is let the leader stay behind with them. The other school was no, let's save our leader and get him out. And save the source. Save the source, because he'll be able to rebuild. Wherever he is, he will pray and safeguard. Wherever he is, he will pray and safeguard them to protect and save as much as possible. What good will it do to them if he is also suffering? Thus, what emerges from this is that there is a dispute here between the leadership style of the leaders of the Prague community and that those of big communities that I mentioned, and after studying the matter, it seemed that this is an irreconcilable difference of opinions, and he puts my italics here, which means there's a major difference in the opinions of what to do in the situation of it. And he brings down the source here of the Chidushei Hatam Sofer on Masechet Chulin, page 46a, if you want to check it up there.
What else about like not putting your life in danger?
What-
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you're saying this, I'm like,
So that's Nadav Yehuda. Nadav Yehuda is like, what do you mean? You know that if there's danger coming, pick up and leave. But you don't need me to tell you that. It's pretty
isn't
apparent.
that part of the,
So why he didn't pick up
responsibility?
So Shematem et nafshotechem me'od, we can go into all of it. Generally, it's in regards to health decisions. Like, you know, if a person knows that doing something unhealthy or like going, let's say, skydiving. You know, there's a certain percentage of people that go skydiving that the parachutes don't open every year. It's not, it happens all the time. It's not like it stopped happening. There's danger there. So the guy, what are you doing it for? Are you doing it for the excitement and the thrill to put a person's life in danger? Don't do that. That's protect your souls.
Yeah, it's not about your daily.
It could also be daily. Listen, it can be taken to a big extent. Don't eat this, don't eat that. But it can go very far. Because today we have a lot of knowledge. Today we know that even coffee, I like to drink coffee, but we now know that coffee depletes magnesium and calcium and certain things from the body when consistently being drunk on a daily basis. And that's why you see, go doctor.
There are more benefits to drinking coffee than not drinking coffee.
Than not,
But-
okay.
And amount of food is not that much as long as you're eating decent diet. It's the crap people put in coffee. Sugar is carcinogenic and not good for you.
Mhm.
And milk and half is not good.
And all that other stuff that they put the addition. So the coffee, I drink it black,
And if
you know.
you wanted to-
Once you go black, you don't go back. And since I've been doing this double espresso, it's been fantastic. I love it, you know. I won't go, I don't think I'm going to go back to
The
that.
problem is not with the coffee, it's the sugar and the milk.
No, but doctor, I'll tell you another thing.
Starbucks,
Drinking too much
the
coffee,
pump,
depending if you have a heart
flavor,
situation.
Yeah.
No,
Coffee
it's
itself
a bit
is not
different.
the-
But
it's not
let's
the
talk
best,
in
but it's
general,
not
for the general
the-
population, 2 cups a day is
Yeah,
good.
we
It
have
actually helps
coffee, at
prevent
least 2 coffee a day.
Parkinson's disease. It also helps prevent gallstones. So coffee has its benefits.
It has benefits. But there is one other thing about coffee that,
Moderation.
There's something else in it that also actually has an anti-aging component. I forgot what it is.
of coffee.
But remember, there's not all coffee is created equal. Too. The quality of coffee makes a difference.
That's all I want to tell you. So it's not well known, but I did do research on this, is that there are a lot of pesticides and insecticides used in other countries. Coffee, it's seemingly, I don't know why, it's seeming like the coffee companies had lobbied the US government to some extent, where coffee can be imported even if it has on it extremely dangerous pesticides and insecticides and chemicals, and it's unchecked. From what I read, I don't know this as a fact. So remember,
I would not be surprised.
and so because of this, you have to remember a lot of this coffee,
No, that's
the
what-
good quality coffee is grown where? Dominican Republic, Jamaica, South America. Do you think they have the same types of rules and regulations and guidelines like there are here? Not that ours is the best here, but they don't. They definitely don't even have what we have. That standard.
Here, have a whole different way. It's like, yes, these regulations are in place.
It's kind of like the USDA
It's all natural.
organic signs that are on the packaging, which I found out that the USDA actually doesn't inspect those. It's inspected through like third parties, and they get to put it on it. But that's another discussion. So, in regards to the coffee in and of itself, that's it. So, shmatem et nafshotechem me'od, like you're asking, can go to the levels are never ending.
Just by the way, on pesticides and stuff, my attitude is give up. I don't care if it's called organic. It's not called organic. It's all tainted. There's microplastics in everything except maybe the water inside a coconut. But right now, on the top of the ocean, in the atmosphere, we're breathing microplastics. And probably being in this weather, tropical humidity, is the worst weather to be. Because those microplastics are cooking with water that's in the air. But you don't have that problem out west. Because, you know, you're dry, so you don't have as much water here, so you don't have it cooking. So at 95 degrees, you know, this plastic's cooking, we're breathing it. So we've got plenty of toxins. I wouldn't worry about the cost.
So it's interesting. Okay, so you're asking about shmatem et nafshotechem me'od. We can go into it further, but the Nodab Yehuda was very simple. If you see danger, and what we're talking about on this surface of shmatem et nafshotechem is a physical, visible danger coming to attack Jews. That's what we'll explain it to that extent, where it's visible, it's physical, and it's there. It's not like a theory of, well, maybe the coffee has an issue. Okay, leave that aside. They're saying
That's what I'm saying.
they're saying down with the Jews or kill the Jews.
It's
That's
visible.
a different situation. Let's go 100 years later. In the
Second, you said before the rabbi couldn't leave. Why he couldn't leave? What do you mean they didn't let him leave?
oh, the people said the people kept him hostage. They-
Yes,
yes.
Rabbi, how can you
But
leave us?
yeah, by the way, yes, they would do that. They would have hundreds of people. Rabbi, please don't leave. They would convince his wife.
They
They-
can say, but they can hold them not to.
no, they didn't help them
Would
physically.
get physical.
No, I don't think they got physical, but they got to an extent where they made him realize, Rabbi, what are you going to do? We love you. You're going to be a part of our family. They coerced him to stay, and he did. And, okay, 100 years later, in the early 20th century, the same moral predicament resurfaced with a vengeance. This happened in the 1800s with Napoleon Bonaparte. Now, 100 years later, it was a different situation. Hundreds of Torah leaders across the European continent were suddenly faced with a Kishinev pogrom, 1903. A Russo-Japanese war, 1904, where the Russians and Japanese came together. A Bolshevik communist revolution, 1917. I read about the Bolshevik revolution. That was wild. Called the White Revolution, no?
They're gonna go do it again.
That was a great.
Red Revolution.
It was the White.
Whites were the people who wore Nash or were.
The white, the red. I thought it was they called the white winter. I remember something about when I read about it. Okay, and a Great War, 1914, which brought the Jewish world the worst carnage since the Great War of 66 to 70 CE, which was the destruction of the temple. Meaning, in the span of 1820 till 1920, before the Holocaust, that was a major catastrophe for Jewish people all around Europe and around the world, where they were being attacked. The majority of yeshivot in Lithuania shut down at this point. One of major exception was the yeshiva of Rabbi Avraham Yitzhak Bloch, the illustrious Telzerov, and Rosh Yeshiva, who decided to stay put and not to follow the other yeshivot in Russia. Telz Yeshiva. He said, I don't care about what you guys are doing. My yeshiva stays. You want to shut him down, shut him down. I continue learning Torah. As opposed, just as a side note, when Corona came, and they shut all the yeshivot down, and they shut all the shuls down, and the schools down, I don't know too many that stayed open. Everyone went along with the flow, and they shut them all down. Just as a side note. The majority of yeshivot in Lithuania shut down, okay? Half of the million Jews in Galicia and Bukovina fled into Bohemia, Hungary, and Austria. So that was a major exodus of Jews from place to place across Eastern Europe.
What year was that again?
This was between 1903 and 1914. In that
That's my grandmother's time.
in that 10 to 11, 12 year span, there were major wars and movements around Eastern Europe.
My family was involved in that mess.
From which country?
Russian, Polish.
Russian, Polish. Across Eastern Europe, the rabbinic hierarchy debated biblical precedent. Hadn't Moses fled Egypt after Datan and Aviram informed on him? What did Moshe Rabbeinu do the moment that he saw? He got up and he left. As brought down in Shemot 2, and then it's 11-14, and Yalkut Shimoni 1-167. Hadn't Yaakov fled from his brother in the face of physical and spiritual danger? So we see from Moshe and we see from Yaakov that when there was a physical danger, they picked up. Hadn't David fled from King Shaul for similar reasons? When Shaul HaMelech said he's going to kill David, he believed him and he ran away. But what about the saga of Elimelech? Now we have a problem. Elimelech, you know the story of Elimelech in Megillat Ruth. What happened with Elimelech? He was the richest person in Israel, and he ended up leaving.
When was this?
And that's in the story of Ruth.
Oh.
Ruth, Naomi,
What?
yeah, Shavuot. And what happened with Elimelech? That's the story of Elimelech and his two boys. They're Ammon and Moab. The whole situation. He picks up and he leaves. But what happens? God punishes him. He dies, and his two sons die, and then you have Ruth and Orpah and Naomi. Orpah stays behind. Ruth follows Naomi. She goes back, but when she goes back into the land, she left the richest Jew in the world and came back the poorest Jewess in the world. So wasn't he punished by God for fleeing at a time of trouble? And that thus causing Israel to despair. And he has two notes here on the bottom. Elimelech fled to Moab in the face of a famine with his wife Naomi. He and his two sons died there, as brought down in Ruth. Naomi then returned to Eretz Yehudah with her daughter-in-law, Ruth, and Orpah stayed behind. Orpah ends up becoming the mother or grandmother of David HaMelech's foe, Goliath, while Ruth ends up boring David HaMelech. Okay, let's continue. When the Ger Rebbe, now we're going to go into some interesting ones, and we'll probably end it with this today. When the Ger Rebbe, Rabbi Yehuda Aryeh Leib Alter, the Sfat Emet, If you guys want to learn beautiful Torah, read the Sfat Emet. Sometimes I get Hiddushim on the Sfat Emet, they're always nice. Was faced with the same stay or flee dilemma before World War I, he gave a very direct response. The most natural human response to danger is to attempt to escape. And this is the correct approach from a halachic perspective as well. When we enter this world, we are given a lease on life, but we do not own our lives. Every individual, therefore, must relate to his life as if it had been placed in his trust, and he is its guardian. I love the Ger Hasidim. I love the Ger Rebbe. I've learned from his Torah. My brother-in-law, who is a Hasidic hawk, loves Ger Hasidim. And one thing I love about Ger Hasidim is that they are tremendously settled in Eretz Yisrael and supportive of Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael. And you could see from the Ger Rebbe that he was very, very clear on this. If there's danger in Eastern Europe and we have a place to go, then we go. We don't stay behind. You don't need me to tell you that. Life is the most important value. Don't we say, that we will give up, so many mitzvot and things to save a person's life? Safek nefashot. Don't we say this all the time? So why suddenly when it's your own nefesh, your own soul, suddenly you became mahmir. You became strict on yourself. I don't know, maybe, maybe not, and contemplating. He's like, what are you talking about? He's like, if you see physical danger, the writing's on the wall. And as a Jew, we know that time and time again, we're guests in our countries that we are visiting outside of Israel. We've always been guests. Where do you think the Jews are, the Arab countries are? My parents are Lebanese refugees. My grandparents are Iraqi refugees. Where are the Jews there? They're not there anymore.
40,000, was 40% of Baghdad was Jewish at the time of World War II.
The reality is there's no more Jews in the Arab countries, and if there are, they're very small and they're very hidden and they're not out there. They're probably there just for business reasons or for maintaining a couple of the structures or the kivrei sadikim or the shuls, things like that. They're not those communities are not growing, and they're not going to grow because the host countries don't want them to grow. Right. And it's very clear. It has to be said and known. I don't think that if Dubai or
you do see others starting to.
They're starting, but they're not starting to grow for the purpose of growth, but for business. Like in Dubai, they're doing it. I don't think if Dubai got note that 30,000 Jews wanted to settle in their country, I don't think that would be something that they would. I don't think they would be so impressed. Let's continue. We'll finish up for today. In Dvinsk, the Jews were Dvinsk. Dvinsk was an interesting city. You had two rabbis in Dvinsk. You had the Meshech Chochmah and you had the Rogachover. Two great leaders who wrote two magnum opuses that you got to check out. In Dvinsk, the Jews scrambled to get out as fast as possible. It's interesting. The Meshech Chochmah and the Rogachover were very intelligent. So let's see why.
They went from where to where?
Let's take a look. But the resolute Rabbi Meir Simcha, the Or Sameach, the undisputed Torah authority of his time, refused to leave. Defiantly declaring, as long as there are 9 Jews in Dvinsk, I will complete the minyan, the Meshech Chochmah. That's it. Doctor, we came here to read and to learn. Meanwhile, in Radin, Poland, Rabbi Tzvi Hirsch Levinson, the Rosh Yeshiva and son-in-law of Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan, which is the Chafetz Chaim, could not decide, stay and fall under German rule or flee to Russia. So he turned to the Goral Hagra. Now, something new we're going to bring in. Thus, the destiny of the legendary Radin Yeshiva was decided lottery style. So this rabbi, Rabbi Tzvi Hirsch Levinson, the Rosh Yeshiva, and the son-in-law of the Chafetz Chaim, didn't know. You stay under the German rule or you run away to Russia. He did what's called the Goral Hagra. Goral Hagra, let me read to you, it's unclear why this lottery process is named after the Vilna Gaon, Hagra, since during his era it had been in use already for a few hundred years. Another anecdote, Rabbi Aharon Kotler was in Shanghai and didn't know whether to go to Palestine or accept Rabbi Moshe Feinstein's invitation to the United States. That's when all the Jews...
they call it Palestine then?
But it was before 48. So he opened a Tanakh and spotted the Torah verse. And God said to Aharon, okay, and then he puts here in parentheses, Cutler, go to greet Moshe, Feinstein in the desert of America, in Shemot 4-27. Get me a Shemot, please. I want to read you the pasuk. There's a Chumash I want to read to you because he did something of Goral. This is not Goral Hagra. If you go to olamot.net, Rabbi Reisman, who is a businessman in California, has a whole paper of what is Goral Hagra, how to do it, what the process of it. But he did something of that nature, Rabbi Cutler, not the formal process that's brought down, what's called Goral Hagra, but he did some form of a lottery of opening a book and seeing a pasuk, and then he did it. And we're going to read the pasuk right now. It's in Shemot 4-27. Rav Cutler then knew what to do. Rav Dov Eliach, Sefer HaGaon 2002, thank you. I assume this anecdote is true despite the fact that this book was banned by certain Rabbanim in Israel. See also Rabbi Alter Pekier from Kletz to Siberia, R Scroll 1985. So let's look at Shemot 4-27. So what he did is Rabbi Cutler opened up the Chumash and he wasn't sure. Do I go to Israel? Do I go rebuild the Mir Yeshiva in America? By the way, today there's a Mir Yeshiva in America. I prayed across the street from it in Brooklyn, and then there's one in Israel too. So let's look at 4-27. So he opens up the Chumash, and when he opens the Chumash, his name is Aharon, and who invited him to America? Rav Moshe Feinstein. So he opened up the Chumash, and he puts his finger on a pasuk, and it says here, Vayomer Adonai el Aharon, and the Lord told Aharon, Lech likrat Moshe, go to the calling of Moshe, Hamidbara, in the desert. Vayelech, and he went, Vayifkesheu, and he met him, Behara Elohim, on the mount of God, Vayishaklo, and he kissed him. He saw this pasuk, he closed the Chumash, he said, gentlemen, when's the next boat going to America? and there's something behind this. There's a reason why we learned this, because this was before 48, because they were running from the Russians before it started. Or right when it started. Let's finish this whole thing. Meanwhile, okay, we read that one. The winning verse was, with my staff, I crossed the Jordan, and now I have become two camps. The yeshiva immediately fled to Minsk, Russia. So this was before they actually went to Russia. He was determining, because obviously there's two different directions. You're not going to go east through Russia to Palestine. You go south. So he's determining, do I go east to Russia, through Russia to Japan, and then go to America, because the other way there was the war. The British and the German went on the west, or go south. He wasn't sure. He saw this pasuk. He said, gentlemen, gird your bags and let's go. And they went. Men, women, children, families, and they went to Shanghai. We're going to end it for here today, but I'm going to just bring one point. I asked my rabbi a very good question. One of my rabbis, I said to him, what's to say that China and the Asian countries are our next galut? I said, because based on what we've been seeing, the countries are growing rapidly. Maybe that is where the next exile is going to be. We were never really in Japan and China and settled the land. And I asked them very seriously, what's to say that America maybe is the global superpower today, but China is really in the easy pass lane going at 120 miles an hour,
But they don't like
overpassing. Chinese have a lot of respect for Jews, a lot, and so do Japanese. And Japanese are very big supporters of Israel and Jewish people.
Chinese people.
So I asked him. I asked him a very simple question. I said, maybe that's the case. And Sammy, he answers me, the rabbi. He said to me, you don't understand what Mir Yeshiva did in Shanghai. He goes, if you have any understanding how much they learned, he goes, they literally, when the Mir Yeshiva went to Shanghai, they cleaned out through their learning of Torah, Tefillah, the Shem Shammai. They took every single nitzot of Kedusha out of the Asian territory, those continents, and took them all out and left it bare. Nothing there. Which means, when we are in exile, one of the reasons is that we pull out nitzot of Kedusha. We come, we do chesed, we do give tzedakah, we do a process of a tikkun. And he said when the yeshiva went there, they were so strong and so l'shem shamayim. There was no technology, nothing to bother them. They did it so l'shem shamayim, they cleaned it all out. He said there was nothing left. He goes, we're not going to China as the next frontier in the exile of the Jewish people. We'll end with this today. Baruch Adonai Da'olam. Amen v'amen.